Previously, it's been 11 years since Thorfinn swore vengeance on Askeladd, living with his Viking crew and joining the Danes to conquer England under King Sweyn. After rescuing Canute and escaping through Wales, they raise a village in Mercia. Showing no mercy, Askeladd kills Ragnar, telling Canute it was the English. He must move on. Back on the run, with Thorkel on their heels, there's mutiny in the air. The men turn on each other, while Thorfinn ditches Canute to go back for Askeladd. He ends up defeating Thorkel in a duel. The prince realizes what he must do, take the crown from his father's head and put an end to the senseless violence. Canute, Askeladd, and Thorfinn enter King Sweyn's longhouse. The king orders his son to approach, but Askeladd asks Thorfinn what he thinks. It's a trap. There are at least 20 men lying in wait. Canute orders them not to draw their swords. Whoever acts first loses. They must stay on the side of caution. The king orders them to stop. Askeladd is finally able to see the king's face and hesitates before Canute snaps him out of it and tells him to kneel. They report that Ragnar died in Mercia. The king explains that usually they would celebrate his son's return, but first he wants to speak informally. Sweyn orders his son to come forward. He relays that he took the crown from his father and thought he could do great things until he put the crown on and found it had a will of its own. Canute asks if the crown ordered the king to kill him, to which he replies, the crown only orders two things, to use its power and to increase its power. The king says the crown doesn't want him and orders his men to surround the three. Sweyn tries to buy him off by giving him Cornwall, and if he refuses, he dies. Askeladd reacts before the soldiers attack, asking to address the king. He reasons that, since Canute won over Thorkel, London will surrender without any losses, but if he kills Canute, it will only serve to cause mistrust amongst the ranks. The king muses that he must be the child of a slave, since Askeladd, the one covered in ashes, is only a nickname, as his father never named him. Thorfinn is stunned, looking at Askeladd. This is the only time he's ever seen him mad. But the king concedes, agreeing that, in this circumstance he should be rewarding his son, not punishing him. Thorkel and his men party to boost morale at Canute's request. Everyone cheers as a small blonde man finishes his 57th drink. Surprised, Thorkel asks who he is. Willibald responds by asking if he has already forgotten. The crowd is shocked upon hearing his name. Nobody recognizes the alcoholic priest. Now that he's shaved his beard and cut his hair, discovering he's only 23, they all cheer and continue the festivities. Askeladd confesses to Canute that it will be difficult to kill the king now, knowing what type of man he is, and that they should wait for the right moment. An erratic, overly enthusiastic man calling himself Gunnar approaches them and starts kissing up to the prince. It turns out he's Ragnar's brother. He wishes to speak to the prince about a secret plan with him and Ragnar, but finds out about his brother's death. Canute orders him to watch the king. Askeladd doesn't trust him. Two brothers, Askeladd's old followers, approach him to apologize, and he sends them away with gold, making them promise to never pick up a sword again. Somewhere else, Leif is still searching for Thorfinn after 11 years. In 1014 AD, Jorvik was controlled by King Sweyn and used as a base for Vikings to trade slaves all throughout Europe. Leif sits in his ship when someone yells at him to move it, since the first ships of noblemen are about to land. Leif recognizes Askeladd immediately as the man who killed Thors. Askeladd muses about the meeting and how they should proceed, saying they should expose the secret. Canute turns to ask what he means, and Askeladd smugly tells him he's going to die, here and now. A hooded man loads a crossbow bolt and fires from the shore, hitting Canute. Askeladd creates panic by yelling that the prince has been shot. When the assassin turns to flee, his path is blocked by Thorfinn, who tackles him to the dock below, killing him in front of Leif. The guards close in and accuse Thorfinn of being the killer. Leif steps forward to confirm it's really him after all these years. The men try to save the prince, only to find out that it's really a slave girl who was used as a double. Askeladd loudly exclaims that the prince was right to be cautious, since there were obviously people in Jorvik who were trying to kill him, angering Floki even more. Thorfinn explains what's been happening over the last 11 years, and how he's still seeking revenge. He asks Leif about Vinland, but he asks him to go home to his family instead. Thorfinn becomes angry, telling Leif that nothing will ever be enough until he kills Askeladd. Askeladd visits Bjorn. He doesn't have much time left. They both agree on something for tomorrow, after Bjorn asks about Askeladd's leg, replying that he's still able to hold a sword. All over town, rumors about the attempted assassination of the prince start to spread. Askeladd admits to setting up the assassination and trying to tie the king's hands. The prince agrees it's a good plan, but asks him never to use a double again. Thorkel is also impressed by his scheme. Gunnar, still overly enthusiastic, agrees but leaves immediately. Askeladd tells Canute not to trust him and has Thorfinn to follow him. Gunnar goes straight to the king's house, confirming their suspicions. Thorfinn wants to duel Askeladd before the Imperial Council, and his arm heals. The prince agrees to be the witness, but on the condition that it ends when he says it does. A half-dead Bjorn limps towards them, apologizing to Thorfinn that their duel will have to wait until his and Askeladd's is over. Bjorn expresses that his only desire was to be friends, despite Askeladd's disdain for the Danes. Askeladd admits he is his only friend, his best friend, before sending Bjorn to Valhalla. Askeladd angrily tells Thorfinn to come at him. Askeladd throws his sword, provoking Thorfinn to attack. It only angers him and he lets his guard down while rushing Askeladd, who effortlessly stops him in his tracks. Thorfinn had already lost before the duel even began. Thorkel notes that they must have dueled countless times just by the way each of them fought, wondering the reason for so many duels. Askeladd continues to beat Thorfinn senseless with his bare hands. The prince stops him before he follows through with his sword. The prince wakes Thorfinn up, telling him the duel is over and that he lost. Askeladd sits down and begins to explain why Thorfinn never wins. His rage blinds him, giving away all of his tells. Bjorn was right. Askeladd hates warriors, especially Viking warriors. The first man he ever killed was a Norse warrior, his father. He goes on to tell him how to kill someone you hate. His mother was a slave who was too sick to work, so he worked at the blacksmith's, cleaning up as a child. He was always covered in ash, which garnered him his nickname. His father, Olaf, was a powerful man who loved killing, but only named his legitimate sons. Once his mother fell ill, Olaf threw her away, despite being one of his favorite slaves. His mother believed in the legend of Artorius, their ancestor, who she claimed lived far to the west in a paradise called Avalon, believing he would return one day to conquer the world. 500 years later, Artorius still hasn't returned. Askeladd's mother finally snapped when he was 11. She thought his father was the hero who will come back to save them, but he drew his sword, realizing the legend wasn't true. Askeladd drew a sword for the first time and defended his mother. It was the first time Olaf recognized Askeladd as his own son. Seeing his potential, he invited Askeladd to live with him and his half-brothers. After 2 years of waiting, Askeladd killed his father in his sleep, and the blame fell on one of his brothers. Askeladd calls Thorfinn an idiot for not being able to kill him after 10 years, a useful idiot, but an idiot all the same. The nobles make their way to the Imperial Council, speaking amongst themselves and trying to decide how to handle the rumors about Sweyn wanting his own son dead. Outside, Thorfinn thinks he sees Askeladd but realizes he's mistaken after catching up to the stranger. Thorfinn is thrown in jail after beating up the group that the man was with. King Sweyn addresses the council, pretending to be glad about his son's return, awarding Canute Mercia and asking Thorkel to watch over him. Askeladd believes he has won, until the king proclaims his plans to attack Wales in the coming spring. Floki notices the look of shock on Askeladd's face. Leif visits Thorfinn in jail, trying to convince him to come home to his mother and sister. Leif explains how he swore on his honor that he would find Thorfinn and bring him home. Leif tries to use the promise of freedom that Vinland can offer, a place without slaves where everyone leaves in peace. Thorkel asks Askeladd how he was able to evade him by traveling through Wales. Askeladd explains that his mother's grave is there and that Wales is his true homeland. Sweyn addresses Askeladd directly, telling him to come and kneel before the king. The king awards Askeladd with 50 pounds of silver for helping save his son Canute. But after Floki informs Sweyn of Askeladd's reaction to the planned invasion of Wales, the king says he has high expectations for him in their conquest of his homeland. Unable to remain silent, Askeladd challenges the king's decision to subjugate Wales. The king asks him to explain his reasoning. Askeladd goes on to reason that after 10 years of war in England, they should be focusing on the recovery of both the people and the land. He also argues that because the terrain is harsh and infertile in Wales, it simply isn't worth the cost. Sweyn pretends to be gracious for Askeladd's advice, while closing the distance between them. As soon as he is close enough, the king gives Askeladd an ultimatum. Give him Canute's head and join him, or else he will invade Wales, admitting he couldn't care less about the country. Sweyn has someone looking into Askeladd's past. He knows that his mother was a slave, the only thing Wales exports. When Leif frees Thorfinn from jail, they head to his boat. Thorfinn is finally old enough to sail. Leif turns away for a moment, but Thorfinn is already gone. Instead of playing along, Askeladd begins insulting the king, calling him an ugly old man, unfit to wear the crown. He's not what a king looks like. Sweyn's guards draw their swords, but Askeladd is already within reach. Drawing his sword, he threatens the king's life if anyone makes a move. Canute warns Thorkel not to get involved, since Askeladd isn't acting like himself, while King Sweyn promises to forgive him if he puts his sword away. But Askeladd refuses. Sweyn deserves to die after mocking his family and people. He reiterates that Askeladd is merely a nickname. The name his mother gave him is Lucius Artorius Castus, claiming he is the legitimate heir to the kingdom of Britannia. Floki attempts to to distract him by throwing a goblet. It's too late though. He decapitates Sweyn in a single blow. With that, Askeladd claims to feel better now. Floki orders his men to attack while Canute does the same, branding Askeladd as a traitor and criminal for committing regicide. Thorfinn hears swords clashing while making his way to the longhouse, and notices the two men guarding the doors rush inside. Confused, Thorfinn, seeing Askeladd going into a frenzy through an opening, pushes through the mob. Canute, realizing it's just an act to save both whales and himself, orders Thorkel to stand down, to which he replies, "The master must put down their dog." Thorfinn makes it through the crowd, yelling his name, but is told to stay back. Before Thorfinn can reach Askeladd, Canute pierces his heart with a sword. Askeladd offers Thorfinn his life, but he won't accept it. Not like this. Askeladd tells him to go further than Thor's did. That is his true fight. He never thought about the future after finally getting revenge. Canute addresses Thorfinn, knowing he won't forgive him, and tells him to go wherever he wants. Turning to face him, Thorfinn is broken over Askeladd's death and lunges at the prince, cutting his face while Thorkel subdues him. Canute puts Floki in his place while the prince takes up the crown and declares himself king. While the guards drag Thorfinn out, he finally lets go of his father's dagger. His whole life flashes in the reflection of the blade before it hits the ground. Thank you guys for continuing this journey with me. Vinland Saga ends here, but our hustle doesn't end there. Do check out other videos of your choice and let us know. Also, if you're a fellow man of culture, make sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, peace.